Hey there, Adam McClory with Off Grid on the Palouse. Wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about our solar system and give some specifics on that, some pros and cons on what we learned. And let's take a walk up the hill and check them out. All right, so we walked up from our home site up to where the panels are, and July 24th, 2026. It is getting hot out, mid 90s today, and kind of smoky. Actually, we're getting wildfire smoke coming in from the north and from the west, from mostly northern Washington, maybe a little bit also from Canada, but it's not horrible yet so far this year. But I want to talk about our panels a little bit and just give a quick breakdown on what we purchased, maybe why we went this way. So we have two arrays, 32 panels total, and they're 550 watt panels each. They're Longi panels, Longi, and they're pretty efficient. We got them last year and installed at the end of 2025, and they are, I believe, like 21.5% efficiency. So kind of high up there on the efficiency scale for panels. We also decided to get Tigo optimizers for each of the panels. You can see them there. And the way I understand it anyway, those are supposed to essentially, let's say if a portion of the array is shaded, in this case obviously not by trees, but by snow, for instance, then the modules and the optimizers will make sure that power is being pulled from panels that aren't being shaded currently. So another aspect of these panels which will help a little bit is that they are bifacial. So they will take in some power from the backside. You know, I don't really know how much power that'll actually translate to. There are ways we can certainly make that more useful with some light colored rock potentially, if we wanted to do that. Some kind of light tarping or something along those lines. We haven't decided to go that route yet. I think we're going to wait and see what our power needs actually are before we go ahead and take those steps to maybe increase things a little bit more. Let's go down now and take a look at the power shed, which you can see just down there, and I'll show you what we have inside. All right, walk down the hill to the power shed, and this is a prefab building that my wife and I then insulated and essentially plywooded up for the materials. You can see our breaker box, our level 2 charger, and we've had some challenges with trying to keep the building cool. Gets pretty hot in here right now. We have a fan going. We put this little mesh in here. We don't want critters coming in, but thought this might help. Right now it is 91 in here. The inverter is running pretty strong because the car is charging. But what we have here are EG4 equipment, 2 inverters, a FlexBoss 21 and a FlexBoss 18. That will allow us to enlarge our system if we need to. Again, it's a 17.5 kilowatt system, and we have some capability if we need it in the future. We have 3 14 kilowatt batteries, so we basically have 42 kilowatts of battery storage. We have the EG4 GridBoss to manage all the power flow. That also has our charger, our vehicle charger connected to it, and it's connected to one of the smart ports, which will allow the power to flow through and charge the vehicle depending on parameters that we put in, including like state of battery charge, time of day, that type of thing. And then we have the infrastructure, I guess, the equipment for the TEGO optimizers that I talked about up top. And then finally, we have the EG4 charge inverter, which will allow us to use a generator or our EV to connect directly to charge our batteries. I mentioned cooling that we're having some challenges with. We also got this little heater installed so it can help with things not getting too cold in the shed in the wintertime. Hey there, Adam McClure again with Off Grid on the Palouse. Hey, I wanted to touch back on a couple things with our solar panels that I touched on previously. Essentially, wanted to mention again that they're really hoping for with our panels. One is that there would be no shading. Again, as you can see, lots of space here. There seemed like we'd be able to achieve that pretty easily. And secondly, the angle of the panels, the tilt angle. First, the shading, and I was pretty interested in seeing how this would go last fall and last winter. And unfortunately, we ended up with just a small amount of shading of the panels right around the solstice, actually a couple weeks either side of the winter solstice. And the panels, just the bottom portion of this northern array, the kind of the two panels down there, were moderately shaded for that 1 month period. So I was a little disappointed that happened. I guess percentage wise it's relatively small amount of our production that will be impacted, but again, it's at the time of year where we need it the most to get as much as we can out of it. Realizing there wasn't too much I could do about that, kind of tried to let that go. The other thing was the angle. Did a ton of research. A lot of things pointed towards trying to get the panels, I believe, at roughly your latitude. We're at, I think, latitude 45 or 46 up here in Moscow. And so that was roughly what I was shooting for. Again, I think the biggest time period where we're going to have issues meeting our needs is about 3 months-ish, between mid-November to mid-February. And so that's, therefore, I was really looking for that right around 40 degrees. Well, the folks who installed it kind of went ahead a little bit too quickly, ultimately, and we ran into some challenges with being able to achieve that 40 degrees. The front array is at about 32 or 33 degree angle, and the northern array is about 36 degree angle. So ultimately we kind of ended up with 34, 35 degrees basically for our system. What that comes down to, ultimately, not a ton. I'll go into the National Renewable Energy Lab site. It's pretty cool where you can kind of project what your system might produce, and talk about that later. But again, the steeper angle would have been better for us in the wintertime when we need the power the most. So that ended up being, a little bit of a downer in the whole scheme of things. So that, coupled with a little bit of shading on that northern array, is gonna be a little bit of a hit during the winter. I don't think it's certainly not insurmountable. We'll figure out our supplementary power sources, which I'll talk about at a different point. But anyway, I guess lessons learned is take it a little slower, not let the installers do things too quickly without full understanding of the ramifications. I think I'd do things a little bit differently next time. I wouldn't necessarily go with a different installer, but I would want to really again, slow down, step back, and, make sure that we had everything covered before dirt was moved and angles were set. So let's take a second to look at the PV watts calculator. It used to be the National Renewable Energy Lab. I guess the name has since changed to the National Lab of the Rockies, but it's a really cool tool to help you get an idea on what your solar system might be able to produce, both on an annual and a monthly basis. I looked at this when I was trying to think about sizing our system, and I proved my father-in-law's 8.5 kilowatt system with the PV watts calculator, and the information that came out from the calculator was actually pretty conservative. The 4 years of data that I had consistently actually was a little bit higher in the production than what the PV watts calculator estimated. So what you do is you put your lat, long, or your location into the database, which allows it to pull a bunch of weather data, and then you go in and identify your system components. So for example, ours is a 17.5 kilowatt system. It's a premium level that has to do with the efficiency of the system. You talk about the array type, whether it's a tracking or a fixed setup. You can go into some specifics on system losses in terms of shading and those parameters. And then you put in your tilt degree and then your azimuth. So you can see for ours, it comes up with a estimated kilowatt production of about 23,500 kilowatts per year. And then it further breaks it down by month, with a low in December of 838 and a high in July of 3,100. So then let's look at what the setup would be, the production from a 45-degree tilt angle. I talked about how that was, in many cases, the research I found, that would have been the best angle for our wintertime production. You can see that the the annual production is just a little bit less, 23,200. What's most important to look at, I think, is what the production would be in November through February. So I wanted to put the two together to provide a little snapshot of the differences between the 34.5-degree tilt angle that we do have versus the hypothetical 45-degree tilt angle. And the timing of concern really is the winter, November through February. And as you can see with the two of them side by side, the biggest difference is basically 60 kilowatts a month. So that's 2 kilowatts a day difference in any of those 4 months. I don't think that's really going to be a significant impact to us. Sure, we would have preferred to have the 45-degree angle, but I think we'll be able to get by just the same, essentially, with our existing 34.5-degree angle. I hope you enjoyed hearing about our solar setup, and excited to see if you have any comments or thoughts on this, and look forward to touching base with you next time. Thanks.